Hey Virgo, last night. Specific temporal marker that creates urgency while remaining vague enough to mean anything recent. Could be literal, last night, the darkness that just passed. Could be metaphorical, last night, any recent period of confusion or poor judgment. Could be completely fabricated, just language designed to make this feel immediate, pressing, freshly occurred. And you're already doing it, aren't you? Already replaying your own last night, already scanning recent interactions for what mistake might have been made, already wondering if you were that mistake or if someone made a mistake regarding you, already constructing narrative around timeline you've been given without questioning whether that timeline is real or just strategic specificity that makes vague promise feel concrete. That's how this works. Give you one specific detail last night, and suddenly vague promise about mistakes and realizations feels personally relevant. Feels like it could apply to your actual life instead of being generic activation that applies to everyone reading it. But last night for you is different than last night for next person reading this, and mistake means different things to different people. And realize something major is so broad it could encompass literally any shift in awareness anyone has ever had about anyone else. So you're not receiving information, you're receiving template frame you're meant to fill with your own specifics. Mirror you're meant to see yourself in despite being shown nothing but your own reflection. Scalp tingling with recognition of pattern I've seen repeated endlessly. Big mistake, emphasizer, drama inflator. Mistake alone doesn't create enough activation, doesn't generate enough urgency, needs big, needs major, needs wow and emojis and capital letters and all the typography of significance that compensates for absence of actual specific information. Because if mistake were genuinely big, genuinely significant, genuinely major, would it need all that emphasis? Would it require performance of importance? Or would importance be self evident in details being shared? But there are no details. There's just big, there's just major, there's just wow and emoji and capital letters screaming this matters without explaining what this actually is. And that absence of content, that void where information should be, you're meant to fill it. You're meant to supply the big mistake from your own life, your own relationships, your own history. You're meant to decide what major thing someone supposedly realized and then attribute that realization to them instead of recognizing you just supplied it yourself. It's projection theater, performance where you're simultaneously audience and actor, where you're watching story about yourself that you're actually writing in real time while believing you're receiving information from external source. And maybe someone did make mistake last night. Maybe someone did have realization. Maybe it even involved you in some way. But this title doesn't know that, isn't telling you that, isn't providing any actual information beyond framework for you to project your own hopes and fears onto. Jaw clenching, involuntarily creating pressure that radiates through skull, was made passive construction. Mistake was made, not someone made a mistake, not specific person took specific action that constituted mistake. Mistake was made by whom? Unclear. To whom? Unspecified. About what? Not mentioned. Passive voice removes agency. makes mistake seem like event that occurred rather than choice someone made, makes it feel less like responsibility exists and more like circumstances just happened. Like mistake emerged from void rather than from person making decisions, which is convenient for whoever supposedly made this mistake. Framing it passively, mistake was made rather than I made mistake, allows maintaining distance from responsibility, allows suggesting error without owning it, allows implying regret without committing to accountability. But you're meant to accept that passive framing uncritically. You're meant to hear a mistake was made and feel validated without asking who made it, why they made it, what exactly they did that constitutes mistake, whether they're actually taking responsibility or just performing regret without substance. Because if someone genuinely realized they made mistake regarding you, if they genuinely had major revelation about their error, wouldn't they tell you directly? Wouldn't they communicate clearly? Wouldn't they say specifically what they did wrong instead of letting you hear about it through vague title that could apply to anyone? Unless mistake wasn't actually made, unless realization didn't actually happen. Unless this is just framework designed to activate your desire for validation, for vindication, for someone finally recognizing what you've known all along about how you should be treated or valued or considered. Sternum aching like something's pressing against it from inside, trying to escape. They realized something major about you. Ah, yes. They, unspecified other, could be anyone. Ex partner, current interest, friend who's been distant, family member who doesn't understand you, colleague who underestimated you, anyone you've had any kind of relationship with ever who you secretly hope finally sees you clearly. They realized, had epiphany, achieved clarity, came to understanding. But about what? About who you are, about your value, about their mistake in letting you go or not choosing you or taking you for granted, about how wrong they were in their assessment or treatment or prioritization of you. Title doesn't say, leaves it blank, lets you fill in realization with whatever you most want someone to see about you, whatever truth about yourself you wish others recognized, whatever quality or value or significance you feel gets overlooked by people who should notice it. And something major, not minor, not small, not modest realization, major, big, significant, life altering. The kind of realization that changes everything, that makes someone rethink their choices, that creates urgency to reconnect or repair or rectify. Except major is subjective. What's major to one person is trivial to another. What feels life altering in moment of realization often feels less significant in light of day. What seems urgent during emotional intensity becomes less pressing once intensity fades. So even if someone did have realization about you, even if it felt major to them in moment, that doesn't guarantee it translates into anything concrete, doesn't promise action, doesn't ensure follow through, doesn't mean realization becomes, communication becomes changed, behavior becomes different outcome. Realization alone changes nothing. Action changes things. Choices change things. Consistent behavior over time changes things. Sudden awareness that someone had revelation about you, that's just information. Information that might lead somewhere, might not. might feel significant briefly, then dissolve into same patterns that existed before realization supposedly occurred. Throat constricting, making swallowing require conscious effort about you. Last phrase, final emphasis. Whatever they realized, whatever major thing became clear, whatever big mistake revealed itself, it's about you. You're central. Your focus. You're the one who matters enough that someone's having revelations about their relationship to you. Which feels validating, doesn't it? Being significant enough to occupy someone's realization, being important enough that they're having major insights about you specifically, being the subject of someone else's epiphany instead of being overlooked or dismissed or forgotten. But consider what about you actually means. Does it mean they realized your inherent value, or that they realized you were useful in ways they didn't recognize before? Does it mean they saw your authentic worth, or that they saw how they could benefit from connection with you? About you doesn't specify whether realization is flattering or unflattering. Doesn't confirm whether what they realized makes you look good or makes them look bad, or reveals something complicated that doesn't fit neatly into categories of good and bad. About you just means you're the subject, you're what their realization concerned. But content of that realization, still unspecified, still blank, still space for you to fill with your own hopes about what you wish someone would realize about you. And maybe they realized you're more valuable than they thought. Maybe they realized letting you go was a mistake. Maybe they realized you were right about things they dismissed. Maybe they realized they took you for granted. Or maybe they realized you weren't what they thought you were. Maybe they realized their initial assessment was too generous. Maybe they realized connection wasn't as deep as they imagined. Maybe they realized they made right choice in creating distance. Point is, about you doesn't tell you what they realized, doesn't give you information, just gives you subject you and lets you write rest of sentence yourself. Shoulder blades, feeling like they're being pulled backward by invisible force. Let's reconstruct what's actually happening here. Title promises specific recent event last night. Promises significance, big mistake, something major. Promises it involves you about you. Promises realization occurred. They realized, but provides zero actual content, zero specifics, zero information beyond temporal marker and scale indicators and subject identification. Everything else, who they is, what mistake was, what realization entailed, why it matters, what it changes, all of that is missing. Which means you supply it. You fill in blanks. You decide who they is based on who you hope had realization about you. You determine what mistake was based on what errors you wish someone would acknowledge. You specify what they realized based on what truths you want someone to see, and then you believe you received information when really you generated it yourself. You think title told you something when really it just gave you mirror to see your own hopes and desires reflected back. That's the mechanism. That's how vague promises activate specific responses. Give enough framework that people can project themselves into it. Give enough suggestion that people fill gaps with their own content. Then let them believe the story they constructed came from external source rather than internal generation. And it works, obviously works. You're here reading this. You clicked on title, You had immediate reaction to big mistake, and they realized, and about you. You started constructing narrative before you even finished reading all the words. That's not your fault. That's human nature. We're pattern seeking creatures. We're meaning making machines. Give us partial information and we complete it. Give us vague framework and we fill it with specifics. Give us empty promise and we supply the hope. Lower back aching with tension I've been holding without realizing. So, what's true here? What's actually being communicated beyond activation mechanics? Maybe this. You want someone to realize something about you. You want your value recognized. You want mistakes acknowledged. You want to be seen clearly, appreciated, fully, understood deeply by someone who currently doesn't see you that way or who you fear doesn't see you that way. And that wanting, that's real, that's valid, that's human need for recognition and appreciation and being valued by people who matter to us. But wanting someone to have realization and them actually having it are different things. Wishing they'd recognize their mistake and them actually recognizing it are separate realities. Hoping they see you clearly and them actually seeing you clearly exist in different domains. One's internal desire, others' external reality. And reading title that promises they realize something major about you that's not those domains converging. That's not wish becoming reality. That's just wish being activated. Being reminded, being reinforced through suggestion that yes, someone is having realization. Yes, it's about you. Yes, it's major. Yes, it happened recently. But who's someone? What's realization? When's recently? All unspecified, all blank, all waiting for you to project yourself into frame that title created. Hip flexors tight, like they've been contracted too long without release. Wow, let's return to that. Opening expression, exclamation of surprise, delight, intensity, sets tone. Creates expectation that what follows is surprising, delightful, intense enough to warrant reaction. But wow about what? What actual event or information or development justifies that wow? Title doesn't specify, just leads with wow and expects you to feel it, to embody it, to match energy of amazement without being given anything amazing to react to. That's priming, that's conditioning emotional response before content arrives. That's teaching you how to feel about information before information is actually provided. So when vague promise does arrive, mistake was made, realization happened, you're already in state of wow, already activated, already primed to receive vague content as significant because emotional setup suggested significance. It's backwards. Normally, content generates response. Something amazing happens and you respond with amazement. Something surprising occurs and you react with surprise. Something intense develops and you feel intensity. But here, response comes first. Wow before content, activation before information, emotional state manufactured in advance of having anything to actually feel that way about. And by the time you reach end of title, by the time you've absorbed big mistake and they realized and about you, you've forgotten that wow wasn't response to content. You think you're responding to what title told you. You think your activation is justified by information received. But you didn't receive information. You received emotional instruction, wow, followed by empty framework, mistake, realization about you that you filled with your own content and then responded to as if that content came from title rather than from your own hopes and fears. Diaphragm tight, making full breath feel like effort rather than ease. What would actual information look like? What would specific communication about mistake and realization contain? Would say who? Would identify specific person who had specific realization, would name them or describe them or give you enough detail that you'd know exactly who title is referring to. Would say when, would specify not just last night but actual time frame, would give you temporal markers specific enough that you could verify whether anything actually happened when title claims it happened, would say what, would describe actual mistake made, would articulate actual realization had, would give you content instead of just categories, mistake, realization that you're meant to fill yourself, would say why it matters, would explain implications, would connect realization to potential action or change or development that affects you concretely rather than just existing as abstraction about someone thinking something about you, would say what comes next, would suggest outcome, trajectory, next step, would give you information about what supposed realization means practically rather than just emotionally. But title gives you none of that. Gives you labels without content, gives you framework without information, gives you activation without substance, which tells you something. Tells you this isn't about informing you, this is about activating you. This is about creating emotional state, hope, vindication, anticipation that keeps you engaged, keeps you reading, keeps you projecting yourself into vague promises that feel specific because you made them specific through your own interpretation. Ankles feeling unstable, like foundation underneath isn't quite solid. Here's what you're not being told. Here's what title carefully avoids mentioning. Whether realization leads anywhere, whether mistake being recognized changes anything, whether awareness someone supposedly achieved translates into different behavior, different choices, different treatment of you, because realization alone is cheap, costs nothing, changes nothing. Someone can realize they made mistake and still make same mistake again. Someone can recognize your value and still choose not to act on that recognition. Someone can have major epiphany about you and still maintain same distance, same patterns, same dynamic that existed before epiphany supposedly occurred. Awareness doesn't equal transformation. Recognition doesn't guarantee change. Realization doesn't promise different outcome. So even if everything title suggests is true, even if someone did have mistake recognizing, value seeing, realization about you last night, that doesn't mean anything shifts. Doesn't mean they reach out, doesn't mean relationship changes, doesn't mean you get apology or acknowledgement or different treatment. It just means maybe, possibly, if it even happened at all, someone thought something about you, and thoughts are just thoughts. Internal events that may or may not translate into external reality, mental activity that might generate action or might dissolve without trace. You deserve more than someone's thoughts. You deserve behavior. You deserve choices. You deserve consistent treatment that reflects supposed realization rather than just awareness existing privately in someone's head while nothing changes in how they actually relate to you. Whole spine feeling like it needs to crack, release, realign into different position. So, what now? What do you do with this? With title that promised big mistake and major realization and specific time frame and you as subject but delivered no actual information beyond activation. You recognize it for what it is. You see mechanism. You notice how you projected yourself into empty framework and then responded to your own projection as if it were information being given to you. And you ask yourself what you actually want, not what you want someone else to realize, what you want for yourself, what clarity you need, what closure you're seeking, what validation you're hoping for. Because whatever you projected onto this title, whatever mistake you hope someone recognized, whatever realization you wish they had that tells you something about yourself, about what you need, about what you're not giving yourself, about what you're waiting for someone else to provide when you could provide it yourself. You know your value. You know what mistakes were made. You know what anyone paying attention should realize about you. You don't need someone else's supposed epiphany to confirm what you already know. You need to act on what you know. You need to value yourself regardless of whether others do. You need to move forward based on your own clarity instead of waiting for someone else's realization to give you permission or validation or reason to trust your own knowing. That's the work, not waiting for them to realize, not hoping for mistakes to be recognized, not checking for signs that someone had epiphany about you, but realizing yourself about yourself for yourself and letting that be enough. Truth isn't found in others' stories, it's discovered in your own silence. No predictions, just presence. Stay curious, stay awake.